All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What an exciting time. We get to have our first official DAC meeting of the new school year. We know you've been waiting for this opportunity, so we look forward to a wonderful evening of learning and growing together. I'm Dr. Cupid McCoy, and I am the Deputy Superintendent here with the School District of Lee County. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to the January 26, 2023 meeting of the DAC Committee of the School District of Lee County. The time is 6:02 p.m. and the meeting is called to order. I will be acting as the presiding officer until the members of this committee have chosen a chair and a vice chair, at which time the newly elected chair will take over as the presiding officer of the meeting. However, before we get to that point, I would like to introduce Mr. Scott Hertz, who served last year as the chair of DAC, and he is going to walk us through the first portion of the agenda that will include some introductions as well as a presentation about what is DAC. At that point, Mr. Hertz will turn the meeting back over to me, where we will move on to the election process so that the newly elected chair can continue presiding over the meeting. So at this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Hertz.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cupid McCoy. We're going to start with a brief introduction from Dr. Bernier. Since we haven't had a previous meeting, he wanted the opportunity to say a few words to us, and I know he's got another engagement, and I see he is eagerly waiting for a chance to speak. So without further ado, the Lee County School District Superintendent, Dr. Bernier.
Thank you, sir. I apologize that I could not be there in person, although you can't be in person in a Zoom type meeting. I'm down at Florida Gulf Coast finishing up a committee meeting there, and I'm en route back to another appointment at 6:30. So I just wanted to check in and first of all, thank this particular committee for all of its work done in the past. This is a very, very important representative community group that represents the schools, the different levels of our schools, and one that I know that our board looks to for opportunities to provide leadership to and provide direction to them. Advisory committees are incredibly important in our current governance structure, and appreciate what you do. I don't know, I've probably met many of you. I've seen your names popping up. So far, I've been pretty good on knowing who most of the people are who are popping up on my screen. But again, I came via Clark County for 3 years, but prior to that, I served for 33 years in Orlando, Florida. I've been proud to be the superintendent here since early May. And then we worked through the summer, got our school year started. We were off to a great start when we were disproportionately impacted in our community by a hurricane. The hurricane does not stop our work, though. We got school open, and we are still working and continuing to move forward on our buildings, getting school buildings that do not have schools and school buildings that have not had a place to go together. We're working on still getting those places their common place to continue to educate their children. We're working hard this spring around 3 buckets of information, and I will turn it back to you, sir. We've talked about the importance going into the spring of helping to instill and ensure that in our children and our faculty and our staff, including administrators and support professionals, that we have both hope and optimism. We have a lot to be hopeful for in this community. This community rallied around its most recent tragedy, which would have been Hurricane Ian. And I believe now and in the future, we will grow even stronger. That belief really drives from my optimism. I believe that anything that doesn't really destroy an organization clearly makes it stronger. I will tell you that the emergency work of my team surrounding the cabinet table in Colonial Boulevard really cemented a team in the midst of a crisis, and I'm thankful to the leaders who are represented here by others for their hard work and their continuing hard work as we continue to push things forward. The other two items I asked our principals to focus on with their teacher is focus and urgency. As some of you may recall in an opening remarks that I provided the night I was sworn in, we cannot tell a second grade mom that we'll have it right when their child is a senior. We have work to do, and we have work to do now. We need a sense of urgency about it. We also need to find, in the midst of lots of different competing regulations and rules and lots of different competing expectations, what we truly need to focus on so our children have the best opportunity possible to graduate both career and college ready. That focus on what is essentially important will allow us to work with our educators to maybe trim some of the load that makes them feel overworked and certainly underpaid. Lastly, and I think this is an important thing moving forward, because I know that you've had some presentations around the proximity plan. I think it's incredibly important that we think about what crucial and necessary conversations are. And I won't bore you with Patterson's work, but I will say to you that she has a very interesting quote that a lot of people avoid crucial and necessary conversations because they fear losing their partner, their spouse, their employee, or they're not quite sure how to do it with their boss. In reality, what she proposes and has proven through her research is the necessary and crucial conversations done correctly actually reinforce those relationships. So we have to do them the right way, and we have to do them in a way that keeps the benefit of our children at the core value of what we try to do. But I encourage you to really focus on hope and optimism, to look towards the remainder of this year with focus and a sense of urgency. And then when we need, and we daily need to have conversations that matter, necessary and crucial conversations, that we understand if we treat people like human beings, we're going to come out on the other side enriched in a stronger community for those conversations. So I'll turn it back to the committee at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Vernier. With that, we'll move into a presentation on what is DAC. For returning members, you've probably seen a lot of this before. For new members, it'll give you a bit of an overview of what the DAC committee is about. So we are the District Advisory Council for the Lee County School District. The purpose of the District Advisory Council, or the DAC committee as it's called, is to disseminate information concerning the operation of the school district to various stakeholders. However, most importantly, as I'm sure board member Patrika, who is our current board liaison, will tell you, is the important role is to take in that information and give back meaningful feedback to the both district staff as well as the board as to our thoughts and ideas regarding it, methods often of disseminating that information, or how we understand that information. And it's often quite different, and it's fast.
Sorry, Scott, I accidentally muted you. If you could unmute.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as I was sort of saying, it's fascinating to see the feedback that we get from involving the folks that we have in the DAC committee. We have everything from parents to teachers to principals to support staff members, and it gives quite a broad look at that. And the feedback is often, I won't say often surprising, but sometimes surprising to the folks that work down at the district offices when they say something and they hear how we understand it and how we feed that back. And together, we've led to many significant improvements and crucial path changes, as well as development of best practices that the district follows. So I'm very proud of the work that this committee has done. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that throughout the years, this has become this real synergistic feedback loop of the district pushing out information and us providing feedback about that and information on it that enables everybody to have a better school district, which is obviously the ultimate goal of everybody involved. So the mission statement of the District Advisory Council is that it will, in cooperation with the Lee County School Board, will gather information and seek input from the schools and the community at large in an effort to advise the board and develop recommendations for constant improvement of our educational system. And so you can see that we have it split into 3 subcommittees, primarily at the grade levels of elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, to try to gather the different perspectives that those schools have on the issues. There's also an executive committee. What you'll hear tonight is we will elect leaders from each of the subcommittee groups who will sit on an executive committee, along with an overall chairperson and vice chairperson that tries to guide those discussions and works with the staff on the information that will be presented to the overall DAC committee, which is the actual deciding body for any recommendations that will be made to the board. Often our recommendations are sort of made by consensus and providing feedback on particular issues. Sometimes we do take a formal vote and make a formal recommendation to the board, and we are always represented by, or rather the board is always represented by a board liaison from the board, which, as I mentioned earlier, is Ms. Patrica at this time. Asked to also help for those of you that are new is sort of what's an update. Normally we start with a board update from our liaison. We then work to approve last meeting's minutes. We have a presentation to the whole group on an announced topic, and the change over the last several years is that presentation is provided in advance. You will be sure that you've registered an email address with Ms. Rude, and that way we will be sure that you'll get that presentation ahead of time so you have a chance to review it and talk to folks at your school about it. And gather information or questions you may have. Then we split out into the breakout groups by grade level to discuss that and provide feedback and information on it. And then we come back all together to get reports from those breakout groups of what those important issues or questions are and capture those. And then there's an opportunity to present anything that would be for the good of the order. And then we adjourn. And our goal is always to do that within 2 hours. Some meeting topics, last year we limited to 1.5 hours, and that worked pretty well. When we have complex topics like the proximity plan tonight, as well as the fact that we need to do the voting, we have this meeting set for 2 hours. An important thing to do is talk about the Sunshine Law as an advisory committee to the Lee County School Board that makes recommendations. This body is also governed by the Florida Sunshine Law. We'll get a more detailed presentation on this at our next meeting from Attorney Dupre Bruno. We're doing a limited version of it tonight due to the trying to allocate as much time as possible to discuss the proximity plan before it goes before the board for a final vote. So the important thing to understand is that meetings and discussions between 2 or more members on something that can come before them must be at a public meeting, properly noticed, and minutes must be taken. If you're not an attorney, in other words, you cannot discuss any topic that will be at a DAC meeting with other DAC members unless you're at a public DAC meeting like this one. So you can't pass notes, you can't text each other, you can't call each other and talk about things that DAC will be discussing at a DAC meeting, or you will be breaking the law. And as I said, in February, you can hear more about the consequences of that and other details. And if at any time you actually have a question about that, you can reach out to our staff and they can put you in touch with Attorney Dupre Bruno, who could answer those questions for you. This was just a brief overview. So we're going to, as I said, elect some officers of our committee. The responsibilities of the DAC chairperson is to facilitate the DAC meetings, as well as facilitate the executive DAC meetings, assist with the development of the DAC and executive DAC agendas, and review notes from the breakout sessions along with the executive DAC. That's something we implemented a few years ago, as well as to that when we provide issues, staff provides us an answer to each of the issues that we bring forth, and the executive DAC committee tries to review those to make sure, and since they were present in the individual breakout sessions, they try to make sure that the response squarely is answering the question or issue to do that. And I see that I need to add a point to this slide. There are also quarterly meetings with the board and reports to the board, and the DAC chairperson is responsible for appearing in front of the board and giving that quarterly update. And typically before that board meeting is a meeting with the superintendent and his main staff to go over the same information, so they're aware of what the boards are going to present to the, aware of what the committees are going to present to the board, sorry. The vice chairperson, as in many meetings, essentially is does most of the same things as the chairperson, is ready to step in to do any of the duties of the chairperson if the chairperson is unavailable to do them. Here are the information on who can vote. Only the school's DAC representatives can vote. If you are in attendance, alternates are welcome to attend, but if the DAC representative and the alternate is in attendance, the alternate may only vote if the DAC representative is not in attendance. Guests may not vote, and this is on your ballot card, but we have an electronic way to do this if that becomes necessary to vote tonight in that fashion. And the rules are the same for the vice chairperson. We do it the same way. And I will, at this point, turn the meeting back over to Dr. Cupid McCoy so that she can open the floor for nominations for chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Hertz. This is a little lengthy, so bear with me. I will call for nominations first for the chair. Once a member has made a nomination, I will verify that the nominee is able and willing to serve and consents to the nomination. Once all nominations have been made, I will call the nominations for a vote in the order in which the nominations were received. This will be an electronic vote. Please remember to vote yes with the green check mark to the member you want to have elected, and no with a red X for the member you do not want to be selected. The voting buttons are located in the Reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. Once we have received a simple majority vote for a particular candidate, that person will be elected as the chair and no further votes will be taken. If we go through all of the nominees and no candidate receives the majority of the votes, we will begin the voting process again from the top until one candidate receives a majority of the votes. In a minute, I will share with you the exact number of members who were present, and each member has one vote. I will now call for nominations for the position of chair of the DAC committee. Please remember to use the reactions to
I'll nominate Scott Hertz for chair of DAC.
I see that Carrie Rathbun has her hand raised.
I was going to nominate Scott Hertz, so that's been done, so I don't need to do that.
Very good.
Are there any additional nominations for the position of chair? Mr. Hertz, do you consent to this nomination?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
All right, so this will be an electronic vote. Please use the voting buttons, which can be found in the reactions.
I'm sorry, Dr. Cupid, I need to interrupt for a moment. We need to establish first how many we have present that are able to vote, so that we get a proper count. So I'm going to clear all feedback, and could you just, if you are the DAC representative and you are present, just vote yes right now. If you are a DAC elect and are not able to vote, or if you are a guest, please select no.
I think you meant to say alternate, correct? DAC alternate.
Yes. Okay, we'll just give it a few more seconds. I think people are still figuring out the buttons. Okay, it looks like we should have 38 people voting tonight. Oh,
39.
still climbing, 39. We have 40 going once, 41.
Dr. Cuban McCoy, do we know how many members we need to have present for a quorum?
I do not have that information readily available in front of me, Mr. Hertz.
It just has to be
I
majority, correct? The majority of the present. So it looks like we have 45 members. Okay, 44 members. So a vote of 23 would be the majority.
So at this time, please use your reaction voting buttons.
Voting one time, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
each member votes once.
I think we had our votes in a little bit ago with Miss Christine had a tabulation of up to in the upwards of, would you say, in the 30s or 40s that were tabulated thus far.
We had 44 people
44.
that should be voting. And it looks like we have 37 people voting in favor of Scott Hertz becoming chair and 1 against. Sorry, 38 people in favor of.
For a point of information or inquiry, whatever it's called, I am driving and having a very hard time trying to figure this out. May I just give a verbal vote, please?
Certainly.
Yes,
I vote for Scott, in favor of Scott Hertz for chair.
Thank you, Ms. Merchant.
Thank you.
So what are we waiting on?
right. If I'm reading the information I see here accurately, it appears that there are 39 votes in favor and 1 vote opposed. Based on those 39 favorable votes, Mr. Scott Hertz is elected chair. So that we can expedite the process for voting for vice chair. It is the very same process. So please use the reaction button to nominate an individual to serve as the vice chair.
I nominate Ken Wolbert again.
Do I have any other nominations? Mr. Wolbert, do you consent to this nomination?
Yes, I do.
Again, this will be an electronic vote. Use your voting buttons, the green check mark to vote yes, and those opposed, use the X. Each member, please vote once. We'll tabulate the results soon.
I vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Your vote will be counted. Okay, looks like 43 electronic and 1 voiced vote in favor of and 1 nay.
Can you repeat those numbers, please?
Yes, it was 43 electronic votes plus 1 vocal vote and 1 nay.
Based on the votes of 43 in favor, Mr. Wolbert elected as vice chair. Congratulations to the newly elected chair and vice chair. And at this time, I will turn the meeting over to Mr. Hertz, the chair.
Thank you, everybody. I think that takes us to brief comments from board member Patrika, who I believe wanted to say a few words about the proximity plan presentation and the importance of it to the board and what she is looking for from our group tonight.
Thank you, Chair Hertz, and congratulations on your re-election, and to Mr. Wolbert as well. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. I'd like to welcome DAC members and welcome back our returning DAC members. And I want to say thank you so very much for your willingness to serve not just your school, but your entire school district and your participation on this committee. I am really grateful that you got a chance to hear tonight from Superintendent Bernier. You'll find as you get to know him better that he really is a transformational leader who is not afraid to tackle the large, difficult issues that exist here in Lee County. One example of that is the elementary school proximity plan, which is the main topic of tonight's meeting. I do feel a little bit badly, Chair Hertz, as you know, in pushing to have proximity as the main topic for tonight's discussion, because it is such a deep topic that has really long-ranging impacts on so very many families in our district. I feel badly for new DAC members because typically, as you know, Chair Hertz, our first meeting is really what is DAC, what do we do, how do we conduct our business? It's really an orientation for new DAC meetings. I'm sorry, for new DAC members. But Hurricane Ian altered our plans, and we are working up against a deadline to get student assignment proximity changes finalized so that it can be implemented as parents choose their elementary school in the coming weeks. So while you did get a crash course in DAC already, thanks to Chair Hertz and district staff, the rest of this meeting will be focused on the important topic of elementary proximity. As you go into the presentation and the ensuing breakout groups, understand that your feedback is essential to the success of whatever changes we ultimately implement here. I cannot stress enough the importance of your open, frank, and constructive feedback regarding tonight's presentation. All of you on this meeting, parents and staff, you are essentially our customers, along with our students, obviously. We want a plan that works for you and your students. We don't want some plan that was created in some office somewhere that once it's rolled out, it creates more problems than solutions. As a board member, I rely very, very heavily on your feedback to determine how this will impact your day-to-day experience in our schools. Chair Hertz stressed the importance of your participation. Superintendent Bernier stressed the importance of your participation. I am here to stress that message yet again. As you listen to the presentation, please remember that this only impacts elementary, not middle or high school. We may make some changes to the middle school student assignment plan in the next couple of years. High school is not currently being considered for proximity changes. So if you're a middle school or a high school parent or staff member, you might be thinking, okay, well, this is all about elementary. Why am I here? How does this impact me? I urge you to hearken back to your elementary school experience and envision how changes to proximity would have impacted you, with an understanding that we might very well be back here next year or the year after discussing middle school proximity changes. Each iteration of changes to proximity will hopefully improve upon what has already been done. So your experience, even though you're a high school parent or staff member, your experience can help to shape a program that will work very, very well. So those are really my comments for tonight. Chair Hertz, I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions. Seeing none, I look forward to the presentation. Thank you, Chair Hertz.
Thank you. And let me make another comment. We are using Zoom. We have the chat tool available. All correspondence in the chat is also logged and printed out and made part of our minutes. This is part of the public record. And as you saw, the meeting itself is being recorded. So if you have questions during the presentation, most likely they will provide an opportunity for questions, but you could either raise your hand or what's often very helpful if you're a new member and you haven't done this before is you can put questions into the chat. We have a number of staff members that are here that if you put questions about the presentation into the chat, they will let the presenter know, or one of the presenter's team members will take a look at that, or one of our wonderful executive directors. Like I see Dr. Clayton Simmons on the first page, and Dr. Shanna Johnston are both on the first page. They also monitor the chat. I know we have several more. Those are the two names I see to call out. And I know I'm sure Dr. Adam Malloy is here somewhere on one of my pages, and he's got team members here as well. So they will monitor those. So that is a great way to give feedback during the presentation or get more information that the staff can try to bring to the presenter's attention and feedback. And then there's always going to be an opportunity to ask questions. And then obviously at the breakout sessions, there'll be a short amount of time for the voting, where each break session will elect their representative. And then you'll have an opportunity for open discussion, and there'll be a staff member in each one of the breakout sessions to help facilitate those discussions as well and answer questions about the proximity plan. And then again, because it is such a large topic, without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Adam Malloy and ask him to introduce whatever members of his team he may have present with him.
Thank you, Mr. Hertz, and congratulations to you, but to every other member that's here representing their schools or their families and communities. So I really appreciate your time. I'm Dr. Adam Malloy. I'm the coordinator in the superintendent's office, and I have been a part of a very strong proximity team for really the past 3 to 4 years. My team is represented today really just by the executive directors, deputy superintendent, and academics, where the plan, procedures, and schools sit. So I'm really excited. I'm probably the more average of the entire crew that's on here, but I am excited to connect some of the information with you guys. So I'm going to share my screen, get right into proximity. I use this analogy, really not lightly. The reason why I got into studying student assignment plans as an educator is because I wanted to understand how certain plans were setting up schools and districts for success. What was our plan doing? What were some of its more unique features? And how was it operational in terms of the distribution of students, whether it be, by test level, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic level. We operate one of the least restrictive, choice assignment systems in the entire state. Dr. Bernier likes to share, we are the 64th least efficient in terms of transportation as a result of that. Now, if we were to go into the top 10, that would mean one address, one school, like a lot of our families from up north expect. But yeah, currently we're in the least restrictive side. So yeah, I have spent a large portion of my time studying student assignment plans. I have the honor again to be with you guys tonight, but no, I have a lot of executive directors on the call and also the deputy superintendent in academics. So I'm going to share my screen, get into the presentation. We can go into any questions that you might have. One of the great things about DAC is the feedback that they provide is very action oriented. I think Mr. Hertz was probably a little bit humble in terms of creating pathways and suggestions that become very action oriented. And when we presented to Executive DAC and then to DAC in 2021, they provided some very, what I would call like kind of crucial touch points. Well, where are you with this? Have you developed this? We need to see this. And, you know, happy to be back with you guys. Sorry for the 2-year break, but happy to be back with the other half of the proximity plan, which is really our procedures as it relates to current assignment. So I will share my screen. Great. Boom, boom, boom. And I will slideshow here. Okay, so just a little bit on the agenda, the project focus. Some of you guys are familiar that we've been trying to address some of our student assignment plan issues, efficiencies, you know, really consequences of it. Really the current challenges that we're facing, that's like our big why. And then the proximity draft plan, which includes really 2 parts. The map part, which is a reduction of the attendance zones for elementary schools, associated choices, and then the procedures. You know, what happens to our current kid that's enrolled that lives outside? What are their options? What's available to them? We do have a 3-year implementation, and one thing that I'm very excited about is being on top of the monitoring of the impact of the plan year after year, really studying what it's doing and then making those necessary changes. Like board member Patrica mentioned, this is something that hasn't really been touched in 15 years because of the scale really of the system. And I think that it's important both to recognize that we are attempting to fix something that we believe is not operating not just efficiently, but in the proper care of our students in our schools. And now I do have some critical tasks I'm going to bring up, including you know, our kind of real-time feedback process with you guys. We've been taking feedback as we've kind of reignited, you know, really starting immediately following the hurricane on what we needed to do to make this not only work, right, but also to connect with parents, you know, in what options they have under the plan. Now, in terms of the breakout feedback, no, you know, I was a high school educator for a number of years. I do apologize. I'm not going to be joining the high school group. We're not messing with high schools with proximity. Middle schools, I do apologize. Really, if we align the maps and still keep a decent number of choices, it really doesn't change middle school either because of they have a lot fewer schools. I am going to join the elementary crew, so I do look forward to engaging and getting a chance to really, you know, answer some of your questions, take some of your feedback, and then you know, incorporate it as we go forward in the beginning of February. You know, just a shout out really to DAC. You know, DAC in the District Advisory Council has provided really helpful feedback about the plan's development and map considerations, going back to Executive DAC, February 8th of 2021, regular DAC, February 24th, 2021, and then, you know, just going to that special session of Executive DAC, you know, last week to really touch base about where we were with their feedback. So, you know, big thank you. You know, we can't do it without the feedback and the connection that we have with DAC in our community. So I really just wanted to say I appreciate that in the different times that you guys have allowed this project to come forth. The project focus, this is our why. You know, this is our big one, right? We want to create a better student assignment system for our community, right? This is for us, you know, here in Lee County. We want to set up our students and schools for success. We want to address a number of transportation inefficiencies that are not really transportation's fault. It's really a result of allowing elementary school families to choose and select 17 schools, and then the district responsible for the transportation. That's East Subzone 2. I live in South Subzone 1. I rank 12 choices, right? And the district has responsibility to provide transportation to all 12 of those schools. Thirdly, on that bulleted list is really improving that connection between communities and schools. So what you'll see is a reduction of the number of school choices in the zones from on average right around 12 to right around 4. And I think we can be a lot more targeted as we work through this process. And, you know, it's been exciting to have those conversations with academics about what this could mean in these new smaller zones for both the community, what the community wants in terms of programming, and then what we can do as a system. I did mention the continuous improvement, taking a look at the student distribution. Our current system, not only does it not hit a number of marks or goals that it was intended or designed, well, it really wasn't designed to, it was more of a hope for of the current system, but we can certainly address in the new plan. Our current challenges, you know, just to be very clear, we can't get students to school on time. We can't get them home on time. I'm sure you've probably heard anecdotes. We deal with transportation calls a large portion of the day, both at the school and at the district level. And it's a result of our student assignment plan, right? On average, we're in that 2,500 to 3,000 range of students that are late every day. You know, we sometimes quip that it's not the same kids every day. Well, that's just not right, right? That's, as a school system, that's unacceptable. So Dr. Bernier is really focused on making sure that we can address those issues. We want kids to have better access to community schools. So if you think about our system now in open enrollment, right? So when our incoming, you know, elementary families are participating, right, they get to choose and rank, and we typically have a very high placement with their first choice. Well, that's because a lot of other families actually don't participate, right? About half of our incoming kindergarten families do not participate, and then they are spread and scattered among the seats across the wide geographic area, be it east, west, or south. So we want to be able to control that displacement a little bit within these smaller proximity zones. I mentioned the current participation issues and then the outcomes that we see with that in terms of transportation or not being able to access a school that's closer to your home. This, you know, we've mentioned this in board meetings. So we presented January 5th. We presented January 24th. January 20th and January 24th to the board. One of the phrases that we used consistently was responsibility to transport, right? So Florida is a choice district. So if there is a seat anywhere, right, at any school, and you would like to go there and provide your own transportation, you can make that choice and transport your child to that school. So we are not doing away with choice. We are really addressing our responsibility and scale of transportation. The image to the right is it's an image that we've used. Those are all student dots represented by the little black circles that attend Allen Park. We can pull that for any elementary school and you'll see the same kind of wide swath of students that attend one school and that we transport to past a number of other schools. So that's an image that we've used pretty consistently in our presentation. As it relates to getting into the actual plan, the first big pillar of proximity was the map work. The project work was really focused on reducing the size of the zones using GIS study areas. We worked, with Davis Demographics, and they really assisted us in shrinking the size while still maintaining choice and still maintaining a student distribution or student demographic that could be distributed in that new zone. This work was really, kind of concentrated on not just the reduction of bus routes, which it automatically will do in the size of the subzones, right? But it will also allow us potentially to get rid of an entire tier of busing, tier 4. So right now we run 4 tiers. The 4th tier is always home very late. We also have our start and end times aligned to bus transportation needs and not our student needs. So when I taught high school, my best blocks were always 3rd and 4th block because they started at 9:05 or 9:10. I would say 1st and 2nd block was probably the most quiet that started at 7:05. So we need to do a better job. And I think that you'll see in year 2 and year 3, as we start to consider some of these start and end times, and as we start to measure and assess, what this is doing for our transportation system, we'll start to see some of those hopefully positive impacts. Now, the maps that were produced, we went out to the community, did kind of a robust community engagement. We ended up in August of 2021 with what we called Proximity Plan Map 4, which now we're just calling Proximity Plan Map 1. For those of you that have seen it, it's available on our website. There's an interactive web app so that you can zoom in, zoom out. The PDF's not great because you kind of have to zoom in and then find exactly like what zone or what letter. But we are developing our draft selection with those new zones. Now, proximity map 1, this is the one that's up on the website. This was really recommended based on the feedback that we received and what we will see as the improvements in transportation efficiencies. What this does is it will activate transportation only within these proximity zones, meaning that we will only provide transportation to elementary school students within these new proximity zones, right? It reduces the number of elementary school choices from 12 to 4. It also reduces our scale of transportation by over 100 square miles on average. I do apologize about reading that last part, but both of those last bullets are huge for me. You know, and I think that that's a really big deal for us as a district to get to something that's more efficient while still while still maintaining choice and still prioritizing choice for our families. As it relates to the procedures, this is where I would say that second big part of proximity comes in, right? This project work focused on 2 areas, grandfathering and transportation. And, you know, really, we were so lucky to have a lot of engagement, both internally and externally, as to what the community favored related to grandfathering. You know, it was like, hey, we get it. We have a serious problem. This is the most confusing student assignment system we've ever seen. But we love our current school, right? So what options do we have as a family? What can you do to honor our choice in the current system? And, you know, where can we meet in the middle on that? And our recommendations for that were really developed using the 2 years of community feedback and also some district operational considerations. I like this picture of Dr. Bernier because there was a question at the back of the town hall where someone asked him, hey, you know, my kid's not getting home until 7 p.m., you know, 8 p.m. It normally gets better. When do you expect the busing situation to get better? And he said, sir, it's not going to get better. And in fact, it's going to get a degree worse next year. We added 6,000 new students this past school year, 6,000, right? When most schools are losing enrollment, Lee County is a unique demographic burst. And we are projected to gain 28,000 new students in the next 10 years. So that's really something that's important, you know, for us as we move forward. Now, this is a big one, and I really think that this is where I want to connect, you know, you guys, your minds, your current understanding of how this all works. But grandfathering is a really big part, right? So our proposal to the board, and in the first reading of the plan, is that the plan map and associated school choices will go into effect for incoming kindergarten students and elementary students new to the district. Those are the 2 groups that will automatically see those new zones and those new selections, right? So that's really big, and that sees kind of like a phased process. Our incoming kindergartners that have pre-registered will be provided their new proximity choices as soon as this plan is approved or disapproved, and then, you know, we move forward from there. Now, all rising elementary students are provided the option to continue to attend their school. However, transportation is not provided unless the current school is within the new proximity boundaries, right? So this was the big part that we didn't have with the maps, right? Going from least restrictive to a little bit more restrictive, you're going to have displacement, right? We had 3 large geographic zones. Kids are spread out across the entire zone. If you live in subzone 2 of any of the 3, west, south, and east, you are potentially transported across the entire side of that zone. Rising elementary students, this is the potential 3rd group. Rising elementary students 1st to 5th needing transportation will participate in a lottery using the new proximity plan map in school choices. So really, this is that 3rd group of students. So you have incoming kindergartners, students new to the district at the elementary level, and then if there's a group of students, however many, that needs transportation, they will go into their new proximity plan map in school choices. So those are the 3 really impacted groups. So just to kind of review and clarify as it relates to transportation, that we are going to activate these proximity plan maps and that transportation will be provided to elementary students attending a school within the proximity plan map. Grandfathered elementary students attending a school outside of the new map will not be provided transportation. Just a note on this, we have some unique cases that will remain status quo. So any coded self-contained ESE student, right, will maintain their enrollment and then also be provided transportation. So that was something that we've made sure that's in the plan and that we're processing on our end as it relates to focus and how this all rolls out. As it relates to the 3-year progression, you can see those groups that are impacted year 1, year 2, year 3, right? Building eventually, by year 4 and 5, we see that tipping point into, all right, these are the kids that these new smaller zones are pulling from. They're much closer to home. You can see those impacted groups. And then you also see some additional considerations. We could have added a dozen additional considerations that this would allow us to do. A big question when we were out, in 21, 22 was, well, how much is this going to save you and where is that money going to go? This is going to save us in general as it relates to transportation efficiency. It's going to save us, money that we are going to need, to not be transporting to 17 schools. Those are some things that I think are really important. Aligning the middle school really maps together with elementary. I don't expect to see much of an adjustment there. We just don't have the same level of sophistication as it relates to the community engagement with middle. Potentially moving our transportation system to a 3-tier system and adjusting high and middle school start time. So high school a little later and then middle school getting out a little earlier. Again, transportation only provided to students attending a school within their zone in the new proximity map. How this looks, and we're kind of building it within focus, is that, if you're an elementary school parent and this is approved, right, when you go into focus, you will have an option if you're living outside of your current proximity zone. Now, if you're living within and you already attend a school, which a lot of parents do, within their proximity zone, you're fine, right? You can be provided transportation, you can maintain enrollment, you're all good. But if you are attending a school outside of your proximity zone, right, you're going to have to make a choice, either to stay and waive transportation, or you're going to have to go in and say, no, I need transportation, or, and we've heard this from a lot of families, I actually do want to attend a school a lot closer to home. Then you can opt into the new proximity plan in elementary school choices. So I know that was a lot of talking and probably a lot of technical stuff, but I did want to make sure that we got that to you. We do have some critical tasks. The plan for student enrollment went through its first reading this past Tuesday, and we have some changes and some edits to clarify and to be more specific as it relates to a few things. Really activating that engagement or reactivating that community engagement and communication plan, especially around those schools that maybe have a larger displacement number. And I think that our team has already reached out to those schools and have had meetings about how they can address that and present those options to parents. Open enrollment for elementary schools, the dates you've probably seen like a TBD or hey, those dates will be coming. We're hopeful that this plan will be finalized in early February, and then we can begin the actual open enrollment for both grandfathering and the proximity enrollment windows, which we'll be able to run concurrently. We'll be able to see that data and then make the capacity adjustments as we begin to run the final lottery, which we're hoping for at the end of March. Again, I add in there that accountability and continuous improvement piece. I think it's very important to monitor what this is going to do to our schools and how it is setting up our kids. And we'll be able to really look into that kindergarten cohort and say, all right, yes, we've dramatically reduced our transportation routes, ride times. We've saved this X amount of money, but are we setting up these schools in these new zones for success? Maybe they do need a new program, talk to Dr. Johnston or talk to Dr. Burr, or talk to Clayton Simmons, get those academic geniuses, really their skill set around the programmatic aspect of that. So I like that continuous improvement piece, a part of that. So I'm going to conclude there. and I am available by phone and by email. But also, like I said, I'm probably the most average of the team as it relates to this. And you can reach out to not just your principals, but anybody at the district level related to academics and proximity. So I am going to, we have our breakout feedback. I figured that you guys would be talking about the impact of proximity plan. Just to recap again, we are reducing the size of elementary school zones and number of choices. However, choice not only remains within the new smaller zone, but always remains if there is a seat and you're willing to provide your transportation to any school, right? That's state statute. We are looking to get our students to school on time and home, and then maybe make some adjustments down the road as it relates to some of those additional considerations. So I have now said I was going to stop talking twice and not done it. I am going to follow through on that. I will turn it over to Chair Hertz.
Dr. Muller, we had a question in the chat, which is, will the ESC exception be extended to siblings?
Yes, sibling preference is something that we have been very specific in the plan, and that sibling preference will keep those kids together. That will keep those kids together. So yeah, we're going to try to honor that. We're working right now through the some of the technical issues as it relates to the busing, because there are some special busing accommodations that have to be addressed with that. So I do appreciate that question.
All right, and we're getting a list of them here that I think probably it's worth spending some time on a topic like this all together before we break out. The next question was, how does this affect K-8 schools?
Yeah, so we have a few K-8 schools. We are allowing the same kind of opportunities to stay there if you live outside the zone. This is really just impacting K-5, right? So nothing on the 6-8. We do have some K-8 schools that have admission programs or art programs, not touching that at all. Just the K-5, starting with really the kindergartners, but those K-8s are still offered the opportunity to stay if they would like to provide their own transportation.
So let me feed that back to you to make sure I understood what you said. A school like Northrop Myers Academy of the Arts, if you are a kindergartner, a rising kindergartner, I'll call it, the parents just selecting it on that basis would need to be in the zone for that school, or they would need to provide their own transportation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And if they were going to that school and they auditioned to be in the arts program and were accepted, what happens for transportation?
Yeah, so that we're not touching the middle school part of that. So there is no admission process at any of our schools, at any of our elementary schools. So we're not messing around with the admission process right now at middle schools. Now we have developed for special circumstances like K-8s, where you have a trailing kindergartner with a 6th or 7th grader. So we're still going to hold them together as well. And we are going to provide transportation to both of them because that makes logical sense, right? Not having a bus pick up the older one and then the younger one has to be driven. We're going to provide transportation to both of them until the older middle schooler graduates. And we've put that in the plan language.
Okay. There was a question, can you speak more to the capacity analysis process?
Yeah, so that's we were going over some of the numbers today. So we've run through a number of models about if this number of kids that live outside the zone elect to stay, we have to honor that first, adjust the capacity for what the seats are for the new proximity lottery, and then run that. We are a district, a very growing district. So we were tight in capacity in a number of areas. Proximity actually allows us to better deal with it. But the general fact that we have so many new students coming in, it's difficult to keep up. And this is an entirely different topic, but it's difficult to keep up with the building of new schools. And even now with the addition of portables. So, we were talking over the demographic issue today, and we did write that into the plan that if there was a zone that was struggling with capacity, be it for grandfathering or, demographic growth that was unexpected. One thing that's great about the proximity plan zones is that they were built to building capacity. So we have a number of our buildings that actually aren't being used to full capacity, right? They're at full capacity for program, but not for building. So we'll be able to maximize that. And these proximity zones were actually predicted for 10 years to handle the capacity there. So that's kind of good news on that. But there are considerations, and we do have teams that are looking at those numbers and what that could potentially mean. And what I was referencing earlier is that we do have a stipulation in the plan that if capacity is over, then we will provide transportation to an adjacent zone. I only see that being necessary in maybe potentially two areas, just depending on the grandfather numbers. So we are very comfortable, but just where we are from a student population size, it's hard until we have more schools in some cases.
All right. There's another question that was, who has the final say on the proximity plan? I'm sure the answer to that is our school board is going to vote whether to approve the proximity plan or not. I see there's a Taylor Locke would like to ask a question. You may unmute yourself and ask your question of Dr. Malloy.
Thank you so much, Chair Hertz. My question is, Dr. Malloy, you mentioned a few times that this is not really, obviously we're not starting middle schools yet. And also that they're like how the maps align right now, they align pretty well anyway. However, as somebody who lives in zone 3, zone C, the new zone C, if this is approved, I think that the only middle school in my new zone would be North Fort Myers Academy for the Arts, which I love, because that's not even an option for me right now in the current zone. And so am I looking at that wrong? Because I see that would be a change, which for me would be a positive change. So I just wanted to ask about that. Thank
you, Taylor. I love the positive in North Fort Myers Academy with proximity. I will take that all day. So really what we have to do with the smaller zones is we have to combine some of them together. So in order to allow choice at the middle school level, we'll have to combine like, A, B, C, to have that happen. Some of our proximity zones for elementary don't have middle schools in them, right? We just have a lot fewer of them. So we would actually have to group the middle schools together. And that map work is going to take place. Some of that map work is going to take place over the next year. So no, it wouldn't just be North Academy as your choice, because we would like to provide multiple choices for middle school. So we would have to combine the smaller elementary school zones. So like ABC.
All right. There was a question. Is there a plan, or I'll reword it to say, has there been consideration to the impact this will have on after school programs? And the person asking is suggesting that they think there might be a large influx of additional usage of the after school programs as a result of this.
Yeah, that's been one of those great resulting conversations and considerations with our academics teams is, what does this mean? What does this mean for after school programming? So Dr. Bernier has been very clear that he wants a consistent and expansive offering of after school. So most of our elementary schools have after school programming. They just vary in terms of the cost and then how many kids they can accept. He's really working on trying to get that consistent and then also available, for all of our elementary school kids. So that is, that's something that goes hand in hand with this. We do have a large number of students that are transported from their elementary school to a daycare facility or an after school facility. So we're working through some of those issues as well, because you're right. If you can really get a consistent, high quality after school program that's available to all children, you solve that concern.
All right. The next question was diversity, demographics, and economical variances a factor in the map plotting, and what is the impact? Really on the map assessing. So really on the map assessing. So looking at, Davis with those study areas is able to pull so many different layers of student data. And then, making sure that we have zones that have a level of diversity if we were to control the entire distribution. One thing that's interesting with, with modeling this stuff out is you can't entirely control parental choice, right? And that's something that's kind of hurt us in our current system, is that in the South Zone, you've got a ton of diversity, but you have a lot of isolated schools. So the choice is not actually, factoring into that. So yeah, it was a big look for our team, what those numbers look like. I was really interested. So kind of just full disclosure, big nerd as it relates to studying student demographics and student assignment plans. So I studied the past like 25 years of our assignment plan and how it's distributed students to schools.
One, we've just grown a lot, right? Two, the choice system did a very poor job of ensuring diversity by any metric. So we're hopeful that these new zones with diversity in them, we can start to maybe take a look at some of those things with a little bit more accountability. So yeah, that was a big look for us was, hey, we don't want to create an entirely demographically isolated zone. We have to be within the confines of still on our general mission of reduction of size of zone, routes, all of that stuff. But yeah, it was definitely something that we looked for, especially given the history with the court order and unitary status and what that means. So we were trying to make sure that we were doing things the right way in honoring not just our history, but looking to honor something that we felt was really still important to the community, which was having that choice.
All right, the next one for you is, have the effects that the new plan may have on student drop-off pickup at the elementary schools been discussed? Many of our schools already have extensive drop-off lines and traffic issues, and I imagine this may increase that activity.
Yeah, that has been a consideration, and this is, still, we like to say pending board approval. But yes, those are early conversations with principals. I spoke with, I think, 4 principals, elementary school principals today. Yeah, and that is something that they like to try to figure out. Each school has an interesting approach. North Academy, I think, actually does a really good job with their approach. They made even a minor adjustment, maybe a year or two ago, really improved their drop off and pickup. But yeah, it is a conversation with our school leaders. I'm confident, given their skill level and expertise, that they'll be able to handle that.
All right, then Board Member Patrica did put a comment in there. I'll just read for everybody that says the school board does ultimately vote to approve the plan. However, changes can be made based on your feedback in tonight's meeting. The final plan presented to the board could include suggested changes from tonight's DAC meeting. The next question was, what about unique art program offerings of North Fort Myers Academy of the Arts, which is, if this was a Rotary meeting, we'd have to charge them at this point for this many mentions, but what is the impact on that? And I think what you're saying is there's no impact, that's still available to anyone that could have gone before can go under the new plan.
Well, let me rephrase that. I think maybe, there was maybe a little hiccup there. Yeah, so it doesn't impact at all the programmatic offerings. So our 5 elementary arts programs, which are school-wide, those will still continue to offer those. As it relates to, like, let's take Veterans Park K-8 Academy, the K-5 portion will start to be built by those within the new zone, right? Meaning that incoming kindergartners that live within the Veterans Park K-8 zone will have that as a choice and as an opportunity for transportation, right? What this allows us to do is to maybe think about some of either a replication or an expansion of programs to some of these new smaller zones. And I know our academic teams are already, talking about some of that.
So I'll follow up then on your comment. Does that mean that replication is not currently part of the plan?
No, it's not part of the plan right now. It doesn't have any program changes listed in the plan. I was speaking more to, what we're trying to think, if that's, if a community like, let's say in Zone O in South Fort Myers, they're really interested in having a program offering related to water or environmental management or something like that. They want to partner with FGCU, then that's certainly something that we can do to be responsive to that local community. But certainly we've talked about it with our leadership that this is, the popular offerings, be it maybe IB or Leader in Me, whatever the parents are really interested in doing. Those are things that we started to have conversations about. And in fact, we've already expanded some of the arts offerings. I think almost 15 elementary schools now have the strings offering, which is really big. So yeah, I'm excited about some of the potential as it relates to that school-wide unique curriculum.
Okay. Next question. How does this plan affect the communities of Lee County without schools in their communities?
So we're talking about kids that just don't have schools that are close to them, right?
the person asked the question was a James LB, so they would have to respond to you with clarification. I think obviously all the map zones that you've created have multiple choices in them, and it may just be asking, I'm not certain.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
I'm James LB. My question was, as we have progressed with this, and Adam, you know who I am. As we progress with this proximity plan, it has overshadowed everything that has been built here in Lee County, as far as where our schools was placed. So that question was, how is this going to affect your students in the minority community, and how is it going to affect them as far as busing and any other pressures that would be put on those communities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I appreciate you bringing it up. You know, we're not like the plan is not intended to put any pressure on any particular group at all, unless you are choosing within your smaller zone to attend maybe not the closest school. We will provide transportation still, but the transportation burden or onus as it relates across the board is not going to fall disproportionately on any group. While there are kids that don't, or while there are neighborhoods or population densities that may not be close to a school, I think this will give us a really good opportunity to look at where we need to be building our schools, because we haven't always built our schools where we needed them, right? Because anybody could always attend. If you built a school in Cape Coral, all of Cape Coral could attend, right? Challenger, Patriot, right? They're on the same campus. You've got a school right down the road. Like now we can really take a look and start, even if we refine this and get more restrictive, we could even be a little bit more strategic about where those schools are going to go to accommodate growth. We were taking a look at some maps today, particular to your question, where the population density is and which ones don't have access to a school within 2 miles. And it's actually very few students, which is great, right? But there are pockets where they just don't have that connection. There's some very dense populations in certain areas where we need to say, hey, if we're gonna take a look at building a school, these need to be some of our considerations, especially with proximity and trying to put schools closer to our student population.
Well, I'm hitting on that point due to the fact that eventually it's going to wind up being neighborhood schools, and this is Lee County. I grew up and was raised here. So if you're going to go to neighborhood schools, let's make it equitable. And I'll cut off my communications for the night with that.
Thank you, sir. Next question, and I'm going to give us another minute or two here, and then we're going to go to our breakout sessions and the general session questions. Question is, when choices will be listed, will it highlight things like, for example, James Stevens is a STEM magnet school?
That's a good question. Let me do a little research with Soretta on that one, on how it was listed before, because I believe it was a STEM magnet last year as well. So I would think that it would be listed if that's something that I know some of them have it in their titles, even though they're not magnets. So I would have to see how it would be listed on the selection form. But if that's some real feedback that you would like, is like, hey, list out all the magnets and unique offerings. And yeah, I think I would be open to that. I know that James Stevens has done amazing stuff with their STEM magnet. I was there maybe a few months ago, and some of the work that they were doing was just fantastic with the little guys.
I would encourage, that came from someone in the elementary group. I would encourage the elementary group to consider making that a suggestion from their breakout session, that that's one of our goals, is to provide suggestions like that as opposed to a question. You could look at that as, we suggest that that be done in that fashion, or that's the type of information that might be a good topic for some of the breakout sessions to consider, which is, what information would you like to see the district provide about the various schools for that process? And we're going to have the jam boards and the breakout sessions as well for those folks that have done that. And then I'll do one of Chelsea's questions here. The first one, and we can save the second one for the breakout. Can you please discuss the rollout? Will there be a certain period for displaced kids to be responding prior to the general enrollment? Will there be open houses for kids displaced? So that's a good question. Will there be any consideration or preference given to folks being forced to pick a new school, so to speak, in order to get transportation? Will they have any benefits or earlier choicing than other folks?
Maybe not like earlier choicing, but to the beginning part of the question is that if approved, we have those lists of students that we can provide to every single school principal. We have offered strategic support for those that are disproportionately affected. Some schools hardly affected. Some schools, if they were on the border of an old zone, now brought into a new area, affected. So yeah, we are trying to be very strategic about how we're getting this information out and what options are being provided. Some principals, actually a principal I was talking to today, they're like, well, I'm going to have a proximity open house, and anybody that is displaced, I'm going to provide them their options. Hey, if you would like to grandfather and stay, you know, this is the route you go. We'll have laptops and they can do that. Or if you want to go into the new proximity, you can do it that way as well. And I think, Scott, to the particular question about will they have a preference, I believe that there will be an advantage if they are a rising student going into their new proximity zone, you know, given where we are with some of those grade level capacities. The incoming kindergartners will be solely that proximity, but there will be some movement and some seats as it relates to those rising grades.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Malloy. With that, I think we'll get ready to move to our breakout groups. Now, I see there's something I didn't talk about in our agenda, that we're also supposed to nominate and elect members not only for the executive DAC, but for the site selection committee. Dr. Kuhn-McCoy, I just want to confirm that this year they're looking for one representative from each of the grade levels. In the past, if I'm not recalling wrong, they used to ask for one from like the East Zone, the West Zone, and you know, in that fashion. It was more geographic. They wanted 3 members from DAC and 1 from each geographic zone. This year, they're requesting members for the site selection committee based on grade levels. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And should the need arise for balance, then we will revisit it at a later date.
Okay. So with that, we will disperse to our breakout groups, and you'll need to elect your DAC representative. As happened today, it's often more of a plea to our folks here to get someone to step up and agree to do that. So if you only have one nominee, you don't need to go through the process of the exact voting. If you don't have any competition, you guys should be good to do that by consensus, just to make your process a little easier. Okay. And everybody enjoy their discussions, and we will come back at 7:50. All right, it looks like we've got our elementary school folks back. Do I have who's the chair of the elementary group? Chelsea, could you like to report out for us on the elementary group? And I know we have some new folks too, so you'll show everybody how it's done.
Yes, I was voted to be the chairman again this year. Michelle is going to actually be our secretary for the notes for the elementary group. So she was taking notes throughout. I saw her as I was moderating the conversation. So I'm actually going to hand off her group, or our group, to her, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was wildly unprepared to do this. So I'll just go through some of the points that we went through. There are a lot of good questions about where does the money go? If the money that was being saved by the proximity, where is it going to go? And it's basically going to go back into the schools and the classrooms. They do want to ensure that the staff levels are compensated. A lot of staff have not gotten raises in a long time, so there is hope that some of that money can go to give raises to staff. However, enhancing educational programs and serving students better is top of the list. Let's see. In schools that have a large number of students that are going to be grandfathered, who is going to get preference down the line? Grandfather is going to runs first before proximity, and siblings will be kept together. Let's see, approval date, I think we had talked about that before, but the school board is voting on February 7th on this. So all principals will be, everybody will be notified once that vote is made on the 7th, I believe you said, Dr. Malloy. Let's see. Okay, as far as the rollout for the information, am I doing this right? First of all, I don't want to blather on if I'm
You're doing great.
okay. Let's see. So February 7th or 8th is set for approval, hopefully by the board. The new enrollment period. Now, it's my understanding, I thought it was going on soon, but there will be an additional enrollment periods for in about 4 to 6 weeks, because the schools need their projections, their budget projections as soon as possible. And if needed in March or April, final lottery will be run. Whether will proximity help solve the dilemma of the amount of school bus drivers and the fact that we have such a shortage of school bus drivers? This proximity plan is supposed to ease that burden. However, staff on the school bus drivers will not be laid off. A lot of them are already doing double, maybe triple duty right now. So they will all still have their jobs, but hopefully that burden is going to be eased by proximity. Will student teacher assignments be changed? It's not looking that way, except, you know, with incoming students. However, you know, we've had 6,000 students come into the district, and we're projecting to see another almost 3,000 come in over the next few years, 10 years. So, but as far as class sizes, they're still looking at that part of the plan. So capacity, you know, still a big part of the plan. I think there are just no answers on what school size or class size is going to be just yet, but that's still top of list to hopefully keep school size, class sizes down. There was a very specific question about appealing your proximity assignments if you live right on the border and live across the street from a school, but you're assigned someplace else, which is much further away. They want to keep it very tight. There will be an appeals process, but we don't want it to grow out into another, well, everybody can just go wherever they want. So I think they're just trying to keep those proximity issues, but they're going to be, I don't know, I'm not familiar with the entire area of the Cape, so I know that there are very specific issues in different areas. So I think they're still going to be looking at, you know, those specific questions. Let's see. And I think that's pretty much what I've gathered. Let me see. Let me just, oh, sorry, let me scroll down. As far as equity and certain schools that are considered segregated, that's still top of list to make sure that everybody is being treated fairly, that all the schools are getting all of their, all of the funds that they should have, and keeping everything spread equitably amongst all the schools. But some things are still being ironed out. And as far as the rollout on the decisions, principals will be notified. But we didn't get a date on that, whether if the vote is on the February 7th, I don't know exactly when everybody will be notified. If it's the day after or that week, I imagine it would be sometime that week, but Dr. Malloy would answer that question better than I can. And it looks like site selection committee will be Ken and Chelsea. And that's about it for me. Or for elementary school, I should say.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And who do we have to present from our middle schools?
Well, I'll chime in. My name's Gabe Denny, signed up to be the chair. We didn't have as much to talk about because obviously big focus was elementary this time around. We did have a gentleman, and I'm sorry, I failed to write down his name, sign up to be our representative for the site selection committee. If he's still on, I don't know if you mind chiming in and identifying yourself.
Nope, no, I don't at all. I'm Tim Tyler, and I volunteered for the site committee for middle schools.
Awesome. Thanks, Mr. Tyler. And again, so apologies for not catching your name. It's on the phone for Zoom, so it's in that size 0 font. It's super helpful for me.
What I expect from Air Force.
Hey, you know, and that's why I retired, man. So it's all good. So other than that, though, we really was just kind of a quick introduction and going over how things are for us. But obviously, we didn't have the big focus area that elementary did.
Okay. And I see you did capture some items on the Jamboard, but it looks like a lot of that is similar to what elementary reported.
Yeah.
All right. And that will take us to high school. Miss Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica Recupito, and I am going to be representing the high school group. We had very similar conversations in terms of looking at, where does the money go? And probably the biggest concerns were, how do we make sure that it's equitable for everyone when we're looking at, cultural, racial, economic disparities, as well as the programs that are offered by the schools, and making sure that everyone that, gets equal access to the program. So there's programs at all the different schools within a zone. And the other concern was about parking lots and driving, and some of the same concerns with elementary in terms of, will there be room for all these new drivers, and if there's the transportation changes. I think that's everything. If I missed something, please chime in. But those were our main concerns, just because similar to middle school, will eventually be affected by this, but not in the near future. So.
And I believe high school had Amy Jane McWilliam volunteer for the.
Yes, thank you. I didn't write that down either, and I realized that in a second. I was like, oh.
Not a problem. Well, that takes us to good of the order. Any DAC member that has something they want to say for the good of the order may request to speak at this time. Seeing none, I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
Hey, real quick, sorry.
Absolutely.
If anyone else had something. It was brought up in our group, and I didn't mention it, that these meetings are happening the same time as the district SAC meetings. I guess it's coming up on the calendar. And we were wondering if there's anything that we can do to deconflict.
When you say the district's SAC meetings, do you mean your particular school's meeting?
So I know that. Okay, go ahead.
Because I brought up the question. So I'm talking about the Student Advisory Council.
Mm-hmm.
These meetings are being scheduled at the same times as the students. And we happen to be representing OCAMIC both as parent and student. And because we are middle school family, he's obviously not driving himself. And so I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for the schedule to be relooked at. And if not, then I just need to know, because I may pass this task off to another parent because his responsibility is going to be priority for us.
I'll speak on that. Yeah, we can definitely work with the principals at all three levels to make sure that the school advisory meetings are not scheduled on the DAC. That night.
She's talking about the district-wide student. She's talking about the student advisory council meeting. Currently overlapping with this one. And
we
so
can do that too. We'll work on that. We'll work on the calendar, make sure they're not crossing over.
It does so happens the school one is also on the exact same day, but I took care of that with my principal, but okay. I need help with the student one.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Understand too that we typically meet on Wednesday nights. This was, in what have I been DAC for 3 years, and how many years before that was I a parent on DAC? We've really never met on a Thursday before. So I don't think it's typically going to be an issue, but I'm very confident that Mr. Simmons will make sure it doesn't happen again.
So this is the one that did not happen with, but the students also meet on Wednesdays.
I just wanted to chime in. I'm glad that Brooke brought this up because I'm in the same situation. So it's not an isolated incident for one parent. A lot of the parents that have chosen to be on this, their children have been selected to be on that advisory board. So you'll be missing the opportunity to have, we would need to replace one or the other.
Acknowledge, ironically, my son was same type of thing. Dad was doing it and he volunteered and he was doing it for his school. So we'll definitely have staff, and Dr. Cupid McCoy, I can see her making notes, and I'm sure we'll take a look at that to see if something can, you know, how the future meetings look and if they conflict, and there's something we can do about that for the future meetings.
But since this was brought up, sorry, this is Christine. It's worth mentioning that for next month as well, we were impacted and moved from a Wednesday to a Thursday, just so everybody knows the next meeting is February 23rd.
Okay.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, we'll look at when the next student advisor, or staff will look at when the next student advisory council meeting. We'll see if there's something that can be done about that, about the conflict between the meetings. That's a great point. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order like that they would like to bring up? And that was an excellent topic for good of the order.
I could solve that. It's actually the 22nd. So on the website, the DAC does say the 22nd, which is why I brought this up, if it is being moved to the 23rd. So updating the website as soon as possible would be very helpful for us too. Thank you.
Hey, does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Just to verify, the different PowerPoints that we were able to see this evening, they will be available to us so that we can go back on our own time and look at the PowerPoints again.
I believe they were already emailed to everyone prior to the meeting. I know I received it prior to the meeting. If not, you need to contact Miss Christine Rude. You should have had her link. You should have got an email from her with your link to be at the meeting, but contact Miss Rude to make sure your email is current with her, because we certainly have a strong preference, and the best I can make it a requirement that presentations are always provided in advance of the meetings. And Ms. Rude just put her email in the chat for you. If you can take a look at that and email her and just confirm she's got your email, because everyone should have received the presentation in advance.
Okay, I just want to make sure it doesn't
confirm that
disappear or anything. Okay.
I can confirm
All
that did go out this morning. I did receive it this morning, so check your spam and everything to make sure, but it did come in about 9:15 this morning, 9:30 this morning.
All right, sounds like a plan. Thank you so much.
Anybody else with anything for the good of the order?
Do we know the format for the next meeting? Is it going to be Zoom like this, or is it going to be in person?
At this time, the plan is for it to be Zoom. Anything else? I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn at this point.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. I got Mr. Walbert as the second there. Christine. All those opposed to adjourning at this time say nay. Seeing none, it's unanimous. We are adjourned. See everybody next month on apparently February 23rd, and we'll make sure that that is confirmed and updated on the website and emailed to all the members.